Robert Saleh finally pulled the trigger. Zach Wilson going to the bench, but he's not just going to the bench. He's going to the super bench. He is the third stringer behind Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian. Zach Wilson, we may never see him again. Kyle, what's your reaction to the Jets finally pulling the trigger on the Zach Wilson era?
It's like the Olivia Rodrigo song. We're getting deja vu, man. The same thing happened this exact same time last year. We just tossed Zach Wilson aside. But at least back then they had a backup quarterback they actually like. Now it's just Tim Boyle, who wasn't anything in the cleanup job against Buffalo on Sunday. He's just not Zach Wilson. And look, man, the Jets have maybe the worst offense in the NFL. This season's a wash for them because in this year's AFC, it's looking like to guarantee yourself a playoff spot, you got to get 10 wins, and they're sitting at 4-6 right now. And they're playing the Dolphins with Tim Boyle. I don't think that's gonna go their way. So yeah, it's the exact same position they were last year, right? They have this defense that's playing at a top 10 level in the league. You have an offense that got Breece Hall back and showed signs of life with Zach Wilson. And now we're back to we don't have a quarterback, and we're going to go 7-10. It's the exact same season as last year for the New York Jets, like tit for tat, the exact same season. And the pieces that they tried to bring in to make this season work, all of them are unhappy. All of them are deeply unhappy. Mecole Hardman left the Jets to go back to Kansas City, and he alluded to like, hey, there's some behind the scenes shit going on there. They just waived Michael Carter this week. He got picked up by the Cardinals, and Michael Carter was saying, hey, there's some behind the scenes stuff that I won't get into, but it kind of played into why I'm leaving. Like, everyone is desperately unhappy. They're going to go 7-10 despite having a top 10 defense. Again, it's like deja vu. The exact same season as last year all over again for the Jets.
Now, I understand a lot of Jets fans will say they mismanaged the quarterback position, and I think that that's fair, but I think at the end of the day, it's just proven that Zach Wilson is just not a capable NFL quarterback. He might not even be a capable NFL backup because we've seen him go in, and I will say there was like 1 week, like his like 30-second drive against the Giants where, okay, that was something, but it was only because he was miserable for the first like 50 minutes of that game that we even had to get to that point. And that's basically summarizes this entire season is the Jets had a win despite Zach Wilson the majority of their time. We go back to the Eagles win, which is a great win for the Jets this season, but the Eagles win was because they got gift wrapped a late interception by Jalen Hurts. Let's not forget. If that doesn't happen, then we're talking about this Jets season already being over at 3-7. At 4-6, they're still fighting chance. Of course, we saw the report that Aaron Rodgers wants to start practicing by December 2nd, I believe. That would be right before the Falcons game. You know, that's some promising stuff for the Jets if they were able to get to that point. But now they have this Dolphins game on Black Friday. Again, that goes into the Falcons game. They got another tough game against the Texans after that. So they would have preferred to have been like 5-5 with a possibility of Rodgers' return. But just the utter incompetence by Wilson out there. And that's what kind of makes it weird as well for me. The fact that Robert Saleh just kind of kept putting Zach Wilson out there, I think is a huge indictment on him. He knew this wasn't going well. The Jets knew this wasn't going well in the offseason. Joe Douglas honestly should have made a better move at backup quarterback in the offseason over Zach Wilson because they were not satisfied with the quarterback position. Then they bring in Tim Boyle. So talking about Tim Boyle, the only reason the guy's on an NFL roster is because apparently he's friends with Aaron Rodgers, because Tim Boyle did nothing in his college career. I don't know if anyone's seen the stat trending around, but in his time at UConn, this man had in 3 seasons, 1 touchdown and 13 interceptions. Then he goes to Eastern Kentucky Division II, and he has I want to say like 12 to 13 touchdown interception ratio. So at no point in his college and professional playing career has he ever had a positive touchdown to interception ratio. Hey, if you're one of those that's still in the camp that Colin Kaepernick needs to be back in the league, point to Tim Boyle. This is a guy you point to and say, well, Cap might be better than that guy at least. How is Tim Boyle in the league? In fact, I would make the case right now that Trevor Siemian should be starting over Tim Boyle. I don't understand the decision. It just seems like self-sabotage by the Jets to start Zach Wilson for as long as they did, And then two, the immediate pivot is to put in Tim Boyle as the starting quarterback. And all this too, in the last 5-6 weeks, when you had a chance to sign Carson Wentz. And I know a lot of people don't love Carson Wentz. They hear Carson Wentz and they go, ick. But Carson Wentz, at least 2 years ago, had a 27-7 touchdown to interception ratio. You're telling me that wouldn't have helped on this Jets team? That he would have not been an adequate backup while you waited for Aaron Rodgers, potentially? Or if Aaron Rodgers didn't come back, at least gave you a fighting chance to maybe even win a playoff game. I think that there was just mismanagement at the quarterback position all year. And Tim Boyle is the ultimate, you reap what you sow for the Jets. And I feel sorry for Jets fans this year in a year that was supposed to be so optimistic.
They dug in their heels on Zach Wilson, right? They dug in their heels on, this is why we kept him around. This is why he's the backup quarterback. We invested first round draft capital, and they dug their heels in on Zach Wilson. And I don't blame them for doing that because of how much they had invested in Zach Wilson's success. And sometimes you do get bit in the butt by doubling down on your own mistakes. But I don't think any of those things would have changed the outcome of the season for the Jets, because they're already overachieving. That's the messed up part of this. Like, they beat the Buffalo Bills that first game of the season. Buffalo gave that game away. And then we saw last week, Buffalo, clearly a better team than the New York Jets. Clearly better than the Jets. They gave that game away. And then the Jets obviously beat the Eagles in what is still the Eagles' only loss of the season so far. So, like, this thing is an overachievement so far. And I know that 4-6 sounds still got a puncher's chance because you're only a game and a half behind the Texans for the 7th spot. You know how many teams you're going to have to jump to catch them? 6. You have to jump 6 teams right now to get from 4-6 into the playoffs right now. It's just not going to happen for the New York Jets. And so from the quarterback standpoint, I mean, sure, maybe Carson Wentz, who everyone in the last 3 places he's gone has said, we want nothing to do with this person anymore. Maybe that would have done something for you. Maybe picking up Brett Rippon off the practice squad would have done something for you. But once Aaron Rodgers went down, once Zach Wilson started getting in his own head again, because remember, Zach Wilson went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes on a Sunday Night Football game. Zach Wilson had his moments this year, but Zach Wilson's gotten into his own head. They've faced good defenses, and now this is a real stat that is crazy. Now the Jets have not scored a touchdown in 40 consecutive possessions. And I just don't think that any quarterback coming in, any old quarterback off the street that the rest of the league didn't want, I don't think that would have done anything to change the position that they're in right now. So, I mean, if you're going to go down with the guy that you're hoping to make a reclamation project out of, I guess.
I don't think that there's any reclamation to be made here. I don't blame the Jets for thinking that maybe at the start of the season they could have, especially if they could have sat him on the bench the entire year, because that was the goal, right? And keeping Zach Wilson is, well, let's go back to redshirting him. Let's place it behind Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he picks up some stuff, and a year, maybe 2 years down the line, we can try this again with Zach and see if maybe he's made some positive strides. And obviously week 1 had different ideas, like 4 snaps in, the NFL football gods had different ideas on what Zach Wilson's season was going to be. And that's why he just got thrust in the line of duty. But after like 3 weeks, like, I guess you could point to the Chiefs game and say that, okay, we saw positive strides, but even in that game, the late fumble, I think still should have been a red flag to, oh yeah, the same old Zach Wilson is in there. The fumbles, the interceptions, the just basic inability to complete a pass, because you have open wide receivers. You just see them back there, just like looking around, scanning, dancing, and then just throwing to nobody. Like, that stuff, it just still happens. Go back to the old Sam Darnold quote of seeing ghosts against the Belichick defense. I feel like every time Zach Wilson steps on the field, he's seeing ghosts. And now it's in his head. And I think, unfortunately, he's just a broken player. He's a broken player, and I don't think there's any going back. I don't know what his next phase of his career is. I'm sure he's going to end up somewhere, some team, because even Josh Rosen bounced around a couple teams before he eventually burnt out. Here's a fun question. If I told you had to keep him for a minimum of 5 years, Josh Rosen, Johnny Manziel, or Zach Wilson to start your franchise? Go, Kyle.
for 5 years. I don't know. Josh Rosen did win a game in Lambeau Field. I'm just saying. Josh Rosen got Mike McCarthy fired because he went into Lambeau and won. So I guess he's got that working for him. But I just the Zach Wilson. Okay, so the Zach Wilson thing is interesting because like the strategy was sound prior to the season, right? He is your back. He's presumably a pretty good backup quarterback. He was drafted ahead of Trey Lance and Justin Fields and Mac Jones back in the 2021 draft class. Like, surely he is a sound backup quarterback option. I can understand the pushback after 105 seconds into the season, Aaron Rodgers ripped up his Achilles, but again, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. It just would have been, admitting that we're done with Zach Wilson, right? They have given him more leash than most teams would in that situation. In the sport where there's so much pressure to find the quarterback and to win while they're on the rookie contract, unless you can find one of the 8 quarterbacks that's worth a damn to extend for the next 10 years, like there's so much pressure on trying to find the quarterback that people sometimes give quarterbacks too short a leash when we're talking about the Dolphins looking at Tom Brady instead of Tua or whatever you want to point to. The Jets have given him more of a leash than I think most teams would, given the performance that he has put forth now across 3 seasons. And this was something that was more normal 20 years ago, like pre 2011 CBA that changed the rookie salary structures. This was a normal thing. Like Joey Harrington got 5 years to try and figure it out with the Detroit Lions. Like it was more normal to have quarterbacks that got this much of an effort, and maybe we bring in not quite an Aaron Rodgers, but just bring in a quarterback to compete with the rookie, and maybe the rookie wins the starting job, or maybe the veteran wins the starting job. This was more normal and giving him room to work. And obviously it's over now, because if you're putting him behind Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian for essentially the second year in a row, because like Mike White was Tim Boyle and Marcus and Trevor Siemian last year. So like if this is the second, this fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, because this is the end for Zach Wilson, the end of the line for him getting jobs in the NFL or getting to start. I shouldn't say get to start. Again, there's like half the league has a backup quarterback by week 12 every year, and like 4 or 5 teams are on their Tommy DeVito quarterback by this time. So never say never in terms of getting back on the field, but
Yeah.
it's a wrap for taking Zach Wilson seriously. But of the 3 options you gave me, Josh Rosen.
Yeah. Maybe they should have gave him a call. Maybe that would have been the key. Trade back for Sam Darnold. Hell, I think the biggest thing that the Aaron Rodgers thing is, it just exposed the warts underneath the surface for the New York Jets as a whole, because Nathaniel Hackett's still a bad play caller. The offensive line still bad. Now I see a lot of Jets fans just writing off all of Zach Wilson's failures to the OC and the offensive line. But I would just say, after the 3 years of sample size that we do have on Zach Wilson, calling a spade isn't that hard. Calling a bust isn't that hard. It is just ultimate failure at a draft pick. It just shows ultimately that there was no right choices to be made beyond Trevor Lawrence in that draft, because Trey Lance can't get out of being a third stringer. Justin Fields, still unknown. Mac Jones, we know he's a bust, but he was still probably been a better player. Honestly, if you put Mac Jones on this team, he's probably at least more competent than Zach Wilson is. So I would say that at least, right?
Yeah, Justin Fields would be too. Like, let's not just totally throw Justin Fields aside. Like, he finished 10th in the MVP last year. But no, Zach Wilson is the worst of the. Oh, well, Trey Lance is there, but no, Zach Wilson's probably worse than Trey Lance. At least with Trey Lance, I don't know. With Zach Wilson, I know he sucks.
Yeah, that will be a fun question to ask revisionists, like Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, who was the tougher bust? Because Trey, you have to also factor in the added draft picks that got thrown in there. The difference there is, of course, the Niners got gift wrap Brock Purdy. In the Jets case, if they can get Aaron Rodgers, I guess it's back at any point. I guess it still forgives something, but it just sucks in a win now window that you wasted a season. You wasted 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it was, trying to make Zach Wilson just work,
You wasted 2 seasons. 2 seasons. This defense was better last year than this year's team. That defense was better last
But
year,
I
and
don't
they still are 7-10.
But I don't begrudge you for last season, because a year 2 starting quarterback, I can still forgive it. Year 3 is a little bit different when you already replaced the guy, when you already made the decision to replace the guy, versus year 2 where it's like, well, like, okay, maybe that first rookie season, because a lot of QBs don't have great rookie seasons. We can excuse that. Let's just hope for a sophomore jump. And that just never came. And I think what's worse about the Zach Wilson era looking back is think how many quarterbacks actually succeeded, at least for a game or two, with the New York Jets in a small sample size. Josh Johnson threw for like 400 yards as a New York Jets quarterback during Zach Wilson's time. Mike White had a couple of terrific games as a New York Jets quarterback during Zach Wilson's time. Joe Flacco, I want to say, even had like a 300, 400-yard day, won the Jets a couple games during Zach Wilson's time. So who knows? Maybe Tim Boyle actually will have like an electric day that we just don't see coming. I just don't see it based off his career resume as a quarterback. It suggests more like janitor than quarterback to me. If Tim Boyle goes out there and balls out, then that just further just stake in the heart on Zach Wilson's time with the New York Jets franchise. All right, guys. Well, the Jets finally made the move. They finally pulled the trigger. What do you think? Do you think that they can get back on track now that they do have a different signal caller? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.